You ever spend more time looking for a good game than actually playing one? Yeah, same here. So I went ahead and played 20 underrated games so you don't have to. And let me tell you, some were amazing and some, well, they weren't. Stick around, you might just find a hidden gem that's perfect for you. So, this game wants to be an emotional, brutal action RPG with a deep, thought provoking story. The problem? It's so obsessed with being deep that it kind of forgets to be fun. The pixel art is absolutely gorgeous. Like, every frame could be a painting. And when the combat clicks, it's great. But here's the thing, the game loves throwing random difficulty spikes at you just to mess with your day. The movement feels stiff, which makes fights more frustrating than satisfying. And the story? It's like a philosophy professor wrote it while sleep deprived. If you love a challenge and don't mind a little pain, it might be for you. Otherwise, just admire the art from a distance. All right, imagine if Skate and Steep had a really awkward child who just refuses to have fun. That's Shredders. On paper, it sounds great. A realistic snowboarding game with a massive open-world mountain to explore. And yeah, the snow physics? Chef's kiss. But the game is so committed to being a serious snowboarding sim that it forgets that games are supposed to be fun. The tricks feel rewarding once you finally get the hang of them, but that learning curve? Brutal. And the story? I already forgot what it was about, and I just played it. If you love snowboarding and don't mind struggling for hours just to land a 360, go for it. Otherwise, just dig out your old SSX disc and save yourself the frustration. Oh my god, this game. This is either one of the greatest rhythm games ever made or an absolute joke. And honestly, it's both. Imagine Guitar Hero, but instead of shredding on a guitar, you're playing a trombone. Badly, on purpose. It's hilarious. Every song turns into pure chaos, and half the fun is just watching your character struggle to keep up. The first few hours are an absolute blast, but here's the thing. Once the novelty wears off, you start realizing there's not that much to it. The song selection is kinda limited, and once you've laughed at the absurdity, there's not much reason to keep playing. But if you need a game to make your friends cry laugh in under 5 minutes, this is it. Okay, so Iron Lung is one of those horror games that isn't scary in the traditional sense. It's existentially terrifying. You're stuck in this tiny, rusted metal submarine, navigating an ocean of blood on an alien planet. And the worst part? You can't even see what's outside. You have to rely on this grainy camera feed, and every time you take a picture, you just know something awful is about to show up. It's so good at making you paranoid. But here's the catch. There's almost no actual gameplay. You're just pressing buttons, navigating coordinates, and hoping you don't die. It's short, it's creepy as hell, but once you finish it, there's really no reason to play again. Worth it if you love psychological horror. If not, probably a pass. Now, this is one of the weirdest games I've ever played. It's an RPG where you play as a pizza delivery guy infiltrating a nightclub using dice-based skills. And yes, that is just as bizarre as it sounds. The game basically lets you solve every situation in totally ridiculous ways. Want to charm your way past the bouncer? Roll some dice. Want to intimidate someone using pizza knowledge? That's an option. It's weird, unpredictable, and honestly kind of brilliant. But if you're not into artsy experimental games, you might just end up confused. The story is abstract to the point of feeling random, and it's not very long. But if you love games that feel like an interactive fever dream, this is a must-play. Take Resident Evil, mix in some Silent Hill, throw it into a sci-fi setting, and boom, you get Signalis. This game is dripping with retro-futuristic horror vibes, and it nails that old-school survival horror feel. Every hallway feels unsettling, and the pixel art meets 3D aesthetic is chef's kiss perfection. But here's the thing. This game does not hold your hand. The story is cryptic. Like, go watch 5 lore videos on YouTube levels of cryptic. The inventory is also tiny, so you'll spend half the game deciding whether you want to carry ammo or healing items, because you sure as hell can't fit both. If you love deep atmospheric horror, this is a must-play. If you get annoyed when a game makes you work for its story, you might struggle with this one. All right. Scorn is basically an interactive art exhibit disguised as a horror game. And when I say art exhibit, I mean grotesque nightmare that looks like H.R. Geiger and a biology textbook had a baby. Every inch of this game is dripping in disgusting biomechanical detail, and it's honestly beautiful in the most disturbing way possible. The world is eerie, lonely, and deeply unsettling. But here's the problem. It's barely a game. The combat sucks, the puzzles are vague and annoying, and the story is so abstract that it feels like the developers just forgot to add a script. If you're here for the vibes and the art direction, you're gonna love it. If you're looking for an actual horror game, you're gonna be disappointed. Imagine a Wild West game, but instead of cowboys and shootouts, it's packed with werewolves, witches, and supernatural horror. Sounds amazing, right? And yeah, Weird West is definitely cool. The atmosphere is dripping with eerie Western vibes, and the way the world reacts to your choices is genuinely impressive. But here's where it stumbles. The combat is a mess. The twin-stick shooter mechanics feel clunky, and the AI flips between too dumb to see you and psychic sniper who never misses. It also really wants to be immersive, but the janky controls constantly remind you that you're playing a game. If you love weird, immersive sims and can overlook some clunkiness, it's worth a shot. If not, you're better off riding past this one. Okay, imagine Advance Wars. But instead of armies, you're fighting Godzilla-sized monsters wrecking your city. That's Kaiju Wars. It's a turn-based strategy game where you desperately try to slow down giant creatures before they completely annihilate everything. The pixel art is gorgeous. The B-movie style story is super fun. And watching kaiju stomp through your city never gets old. But here's the kicker. It's brutally difficult. You're never really winning, just delaying the inevitable, which makes every mission feel like an uphill battle. And the gameplay can get repetitive fast, since you're mostly just throwing sacrificial units at monsters and hoping for the best. If you love strategy games and can handle the challenge, go for it. If not, this one's gonna frustrate the hell out of you. This game is like a mix of Blade Runner and a tabletop RPG, and wow, it's different. You play as a runaway android, trying to survive on a space station by rolling dice to perform actions each day. And I'll be honest, the writing is incredible. Every character, every storyline feels real, like you're actually living in this world. But here's the thing. It's more of a visual novel than an actual game. The gameplay is just rolling dice and making choices. So if you're here for action, you're gonna be bored out of your mind. But if you love deep storytelling and cyberpunk vibes, this one is a gem. Okay, hear me out. This is a game about taking apart spaceships. That's it. You're a space junkyard worker, slicing up ships for scrap, trying to pay off a massive debt. And somehow, it's weirdly addicting. The physics are so satisfying. And there's something almost meditative about methodically cutting apart a massive spacecraft. But here's the problem. It's too real. You have to manage oxygen, avoid explosive decompressions, and deal with corporate greed screwing you over. It starts fun, but after a while, it feels like an actual job. If you love slow, satisfying destruction and don't mind a little existential dread, it's fantastic. If you want excitement, yeah, look elsewhere. This game is pure Southern Gothic, dystopian storytelling. It's a point-and-click adventure set in a futuristic Louisiana where oil companies have basically taken over the world, and it feels like a weird fever dream. The writing is some of the best in any game that year. Like, it makes you feel things. But here's the catch. It's all story. The actual gameplay is just clicking through dialogue and occasionally solving a puzzle. If you're into deeply atmospheric, text-heavy experiences, you'll love it. If you need more action or interaction, yeah, this ain't for you. Now, this game is shockingly fun. You start out running a laundromat, which sounds painfully boring, but then you slowly start adding arcade machines in the back, and suddenly, the real game begins. The more money you make, the more arcade games you can install. And here's the best part. You can actually play every single one of them. There are dozens of fully playable, retro-inspired arcade games, and some of them are genuinely great, but the grind to build your arcade, painfully slow. You spend way too much time doing actual laundry before things get good. If you love retro games and don't mind some serious grinding, Arcade Paradise is a hidden gem. But if the idea of folding virtual clothes for hours just to unlock the fun sounds like torture, yeah, you might want to pass. All right, if you love Metroidvanias, this one should be an easy win. Ghost Song throws you onto a lonely, desolate alien planet, armed with a gun and a dream. The atmosphere? Perfectly eerie. The art style? Gorgeous. The gameplay? It's fine. Mostly. It nails that Metroid-style exploration, but the combat feels kind of floaty. You never feel quite as in control as you should, and that can make some fights feel more frustrating than fun. Also, the story thinks it's deeper than it actually is. It's got those vague, mysterious vibes, but by the end, you're kind of just left with a lot of unanswered questions. Still, if you're itching for a Metroid-like experience, this one's worth a shot. Just temper your expectations. This game is city building in space. Sounds awesome, right? And honestly, it is. You're managing a massive space station, trying to keep your crew alive while drifting through the cold void, and it's got that perfect mix of resource management, crisis solving, and absolute panic when things go wrong. But here's the thing, it is brutal. The difficulty curve is less of a curve and more of a brick wall that smacks you in the face the moment you start feeling comfortable. Every decision feels life or death, and the game does not care about your feelings. If you love a deep challenge and aren't afraid of failing over and over, you'll love it. If you just want to chill and build a space utopia, yeah, this game hates you. Okay, this game is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater meets the Hunger Games, and I'm so mad that more people didn't play it. You're in this dystopian future where roller skating gladiators fight to the death in neon lit arenas, doing flips while shooting enemies in slow motion. It feels amazing. Pulling off tricks refills your ammo, so you have to keep moving if you want to survive. The action is so smooth, and once you get in the zone, it's like playing an action movie. But here's the catch, it's hard. The first few levels are fun, but the difficulty spikes so fast that it can go from "this is awesome" to "I hate everything" real quick. If you're up for a challenge, though, this is an absolute banger. All right, this one is for the classic JRPG lovers. Chained Echoes feels like a love letter to Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy, and all those golden era RPGs, but with modern polish. The pixel art is beautiful, the combat is actually strategic instead of just mashing attack, and the story, shockingly good. This isn't just some throwback nostalgia trip, it stands on its own. But here's where it stumbles. It's long, like really long. And if you're not already into JRPGs, it's probably not gonna change your mind. But if you love old school RPGs and want something that actually does them justice, this is a hidden gem. All right, you want a game that's just dumb, over-the-top fun? Evil West is exactly that. It's like someone mashed together Doom, Devil May Cry, and Red Dead Redemption, then cranked up the ridiculousness to 11. You're a cowboy fighting vampires and demons with lightning gauntlets. And yes, it's as wild as it sounds. The combat is incredibly satisfying, with crunchy melee attacks, insane weapons, and a power fantasy that just never gets old. But here's the thing, it's old school in both the best and worst ways. The level design is super linear, the story is kinda dumb, and some parts feel like a PS3 game that got lost in time. But if you just want a game where you punch monsters in the face with electric-powered fists, this is absolutely worth playing. I cannot believe how many people slept on Pentiment. This game is basically a medieval murder mystery, but told through the style of a 16th century manuscript. The art style is gorgeous, like you're flipping through a history book that somehow came to life. And the writing? Absolutely top tier. Every decision matters, and the way the story unfolds feels so natural. But here's the thing. It's all about dialogue and story. There's no action, no combat, nothing but reading and making choices. If you're into narrative-driven games, this is one of the best ever made. If that sounds boring to you, though, yeah, you're gonna hate this one. And finally, Neon White. This game is an absolute masterpiece. Imagine a first-person shooter mixed with speedrunning, mixed with a card-based combat system. It's so fast, so fluid, and once you start chaining together insane parkour moves while shooting demons, it's like playing pure adrenaline. Every level is a race against the clock, and there's always one more shortcut to find that shaves off just a little more time. It's insanely addictive. The only downside? The story is bad, like painfully anime cringe bad, but you can ignore it and just focus on the gameplay, which is easily some of the best first-person platforming ever made. If you love going fast, Neon White is the game to play. And that's a wrap. I went through 20 underrated games, and man, some of these were so good while others, yeah, not really worth the time. But hey, if you're still here, I'm guessing you're into finding cool games like these. So why not check out the channel? There's a bunch more waiting for you. And who knows, you might just find a game you'll absolutely love.